Okay, so our first session of the morning is a video, and it's from a gentleman called Ben Hammersley, who is a futurist. He's the editor of Large at Wired magazine, um, and he is just a world leader in this field. So I'm really excited to share his video. But before I start that, I just want to introduce Ben, although he's not here, but tell you a little bit more about how we first met. So I was running the first ever, it was called the Assist Conference back in 2015 in a small venue in Hackney. Was anybody at our first one? I think Beth was. There was a couple of people here that were at our first one. We were in a private room, but food and drinks were being served in the restaurant. And that was all open to the public. Anyway, Ben was head of BBC Technology, or the Department of Technology for BBC at the time, and we were having lunch, and he decided to get up, walk into the room and have a look round. He'd seen our floppy disks, which are the badges at the time, and he was sort of interested. So we went and had a look round, and then he sent these really amazing tweets out saying, wow, at this event, looks great, they're using floppy disks, he'd taken some pictures. Anyway, we then got in contact with him and said, can't believe you were there and that you were really impressed. And since then, he's now moved to Los Angeles, but we've kept in touch, and he's always promised to do something for us. So this is the first year that he's sat down and recorded a video for us. So as I said, Ben is a leading futurist. He talks all over the globe about how technology will impact business. He's currently focusing on how artificial intelligence is going to impact the performance of top-level executives. And he has a lot to say about how we're going to be working in the next 5 years. As I said, he really is an expert in this field. So I'm going to play his video for you now.
Okay, so here we are in Keynote and away from my terrible face. Now, as I said, we're going to talk about technology, but the most important thing to remember before we even start this conversation is the fact that the way we think about the future has changed completely in the past 10 or 20 years. As a futurist, my profession started in the 1960s in the Rand Corporation in America, and they made their future scenarios at least 20 or 25 or 30 years out. And in the 1960s, that was actually something quite rational to do. But today, we certainly can't do that. The pace of change of technology is far too great for anybody to make any plans further than really 5 years. And to be honest, with most of my corporate and governmental clients, I say that if they're trying to make plans around technology more than 2 or 3 years away, then they're almost undoubtedly making terrible mistakes. And that has really changed the way we think about technology, because you can no longer make 5 or 10-year investments. You really should only be thinking about what you're going to do maybe until the end of the year. And that's a real problem, because most organizations aren't even in the present. It's no good talking about the future when many organizations aren't even living in 2018 today. If you work in an office which relies on a fax machine, or if you work for somebody who needs their emails printed out, then talking about what's going to happen in 2025 is completely pointless, because they themselves live in 1976. So what do we do about this? How do we think rationally about the technology that we're going to be dealing with in our futures? Well, the way that I like to do it is to apply certain rules, and these rules come from the observations of the way technology has evolved over the past 20 years. Now, the next slide has an awful lot of words on it, and I don't want you to read them. But basically, these are the sorts of rules that I talk about. The most important one is Moore's Law. Now, Moore's Law says, for any given price, computing power doubles every year. So for today, £1,000 worth of computing will get you, 1 unit of computing, but next year will get you 2 units, and the year after that will get you 4, and then 8, and then 16, and 32, and so on and so on. Every year, doubling and doubling and doubling again. Now, everybody who's listening to this has lived their entire lives underneath Moore's Law. It's the thing that happens that every September, Tim Cook from Apple will stand on a stage in San Francisco and immediately make the phone in your pocket terrible, because the new phone that he's announcing is twice as good as the one you already own. Now, why should you be paying attention to this? Well, as technology changes, society and culture changes too. As we gain more capabilities with our phones and our desktops and all of the other places where computation happens, then that changes the way we operate with each other. It changes the way we interact. And that's the thing that changes culture. And it's the change in culture which affects what we do every day. Now, of course, many people radically underestimate how much of this change actually happens. This is a thing from the Blockbuster annual report that came out in 1999, where they said basically the internet isn't going to be a thing for us. Sadly, a few years later, Netflix started to stream video instead of sending DVDs through the post. And over the period of less than a year, Blockbuster went from being a multi-billion-dollar company to utterly bankrupt. They were completely sideswiped by the ever doubling of technological capability. So was Nokia. This is a magazine cover talking about whether or not Nokia is going to be ever knocked off its perch, the leader in telephones, 1 billion users. Now, this cover was on the cover of Forbes magazine 6 months after the iPhone was launched. So even Forbes magazine didn't quite understand what was going on. And that was 10 years ago. Now, to show you the sheer pace of change, let me run through a few slides very, very quickly to give you an idea of things that are happening today. Some of you might remember the Google Glass from a couple of years ago. They were glasses with a little head-up display, a little arm with a little monitor in it that was stuck in front of your right eye that you could look up at and see a screen. They were incredibly nerdy. Now, they didn't work very well, and so they were sort of abandoned as a project by Google. But earlier this year, right at the beginning of the year, the Chinese police have introduced them into the Zhengzhou Railway Police. Zhengzhou is a very large town in China with two very large high-speed railway stations with hundreds of thousands of people going through it every day. And today, the policemen and policewomen there have a Google Glass equivalent, which has got a camera in the front, which is consistently looking for fugitives. The technology has advanced so much in 2 years that the camera can recognize faces and compare them against effectively wanted posters in its database. Now that's super cool, but a few weeks after that came out, Microsoft brought out an artificial intelligence which was able to look at a photograph and describe what was happening in that picture. Now that's incredibly powerful technology, a very, very difficult computational thing. And at that time we thought, wow, that's genuinely amazing. And then a few weeks after that, another startup came out with a search engine, which did exactly the same thing, but for video, went through video frame by frame and recognized what was in it, which means you can have a search engine where you can put in, certain keywords and it will bring out all of the clips of a video that match those keywords. But computation got better and better in the months and months after that, which means that we now have, for example, computers which can look at the video of somebody's mouth moving and lip read. In fact, it can lip read better than humans. Now, you think that was pretty cool. If you combined all of those technologies together with those Google glasses that the Chinese policewoman was wearing, then you would have an incredibly impressive piece of technology. But then earlier this week, Intel introduced some new glasses which have a head-up display. But as you can see from this picture, the glasses don't have a screen that you can see. Instead, in fact, they have a tiny little laser beam that shines the image directly into the back of your eyeball, so that nobody else can see that you have that display, but you'll always have a little computer readout at the bottom of your field of vision. We've gone from effectively strapping a miniature television to the front of your glasses to an artificially intelligent system that can recognize faces, can search images, can lip read people's faces from hundreds of yards away, and can then beam that information directly into the back of your eye in less than a year. The pace of change is really quite incredible. Talking about another computer vision thing, this is a Curie robot. These are coming into the stores sometime in the summer this year. It's about 18 inches high, and it's going to be the world's first domestic household droid. It doesn't really do anything. It's just like a pet. It just follows you around and plays with you and beeps at you, and it's kind of like R2-D2. But those two eyes, they have cameras in it. And one of the things that it's being advertised as doing is as it walks around your house and hangs out with you, it's consistently taking pictures. And at the end of the day, it will start to send you emails with the most interesting pictures that it's taken, that its artificial intelligence has decided the most interesting and perhaps the most useful photographs for you to see. You'll have a consistent highlight reel of your day given to you by your pet robot. As I say, that's coming out before the summer this year. At the same time, computer vision and robotics is enabling inventions like this. This is called a Bossa Nova robot. It's invented and used by Walmart, the massive supermarket chain. They own Asda in the UK, but in the US, they're very, very, very big. And so they're using this robot in 50 of their stores to check the stock, to make sure everything's nice and clean, to order, restock, and so on. It's replacing an awful lot of people's jobs as it goes around its business. Now, you would have thought that would be almost the limit of things, but that's not the case, because in Seattle a few weeks ago, the Amazon Go supermarket opened. Owned by Amazon, this is a supermarket which doesn't have any checkout attendants. In fact, it doesn't have a checkout at all. What happens is when you go into its front door, you scan your Amazon app on your phone on the door and as you walk in so that the system knows that you're there. You grab your trolley, you walk around the supermarket, you grab things off the shelves and put them in your trolley. And cameras everywhere in the business watch you doing this. And the artificial intelligence keeps track of what you've taken off the shelf and what you've put in your trolley and what you've put back and so on. And when you've come to the end of your shop, you literally just walk out the front door and the cost of the shopping that you have in your trolley is charged to your Amazon account. A completely artificially intelligent store that requires no human beings. Now, I'm staying in a particularly dreary hotel, but if I was staying in the Mandarin Oriental in Hong Kong, there'd be this robot. It's its robot concierge. Again, it's just been introduced into the workplace in the past few weeks. An artificially intelligent concierge that can listen to your problems, give you advice, help you with all of your travel needs. What we're starting to see and what we're starting to realize is that these technologies are enabling a form of superpower. And it's that idea that is the most important. We have to start thinking about artificial intelligence as not something that is going to take your job, but instead that something is going to help you with your role. In my belief, artificial intelligences don't steal jobs, they steal tasks. Now, if your job consists entirely of tasks which can be done by a machine, then yes, you are facing an existential threat to your position. But most of you, I would say in fact all of you in the room today, are much more sophisticated than that. You do things which can't be done by machines. And so the mission really is to maximize what only you as a human can do and hand over as quickly as possible to the machine the stuff that machines can do and take full advantage of the superpowers that those machines can give you. This is a good example. This is a system called Textio. It's an AI which has been trained on millions of job adverts. And it's a system for HR departments. When an HR department wants to write the most effective job advert to get the best candidate and to make sure they don't fall foul of any form of anti-discrimination law and so on, they can use the Textio system as an assistant to write that advert. They write the ad in the word processor window on the left-hand side. And the Textio AI compares the things that the HR person is writing with the best practice that it has learned from its millions of examples. and highlights places that that job advert can be improved. We're going to start to see many systems like this, augmenting the native human ability of the executive or the assistant with its own digital artificial intelligence. Let me give you another example of this. This is a product that you can use today. It's called Amy. Amy isn't just an email address. And all it does, what it's specialized to do, is arrange appointments. You know the thing, the backwards and forwards that you have on email, trying to nail down a date and a place and a time for a particular meeting. Now, I don't do that because I don't have an assistant. Instead, I use Amy. Amy has access to my calendar on Google Calendar, and it knows my preferences for meeting place and time and so on. And so when I want to have a meeting with somebody, I say, please speak to my assistant Amy, and I CC in Amy at x.ai. And Amy is an AI, can understand written English, even colloquial English, and has a conversation with the other person. And when they've come to an arrangement, then Amy sends me a meeting invitation, and I click yes, and it goes into my diary, and everybody is happy. And if I have an Amy and the person I'm having a meeting with has an Amy, then that negotiation happens incredibly quickly. But if they don't, they have a conversation as if Amy was human. And in fact, if I don't tell people, then they believe that she is. There's an Amy, and there's also an Andrew, if you want it to be gendered in that way. Now, this is, in fact, an incredibly difficult bit of programming. To have the language recognition, to have the day planning, to have all of that stuff is actually very sophisticated, which is why we've never seen this before last year. But this frees us up. It gives us the superpowers. It gives us the ability to hand these mundane tasks off to the systems. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that we have this ever doubling and doubling and doubling of technological capability. And with that new technology and with those new technological capabilities, they give us new human capabilities. They free up our time to do other things. And to take full advantage of that, we're going to require a whole new way of thinking. And so I want to leave you with what I think is the most important technique to develop that whole new way of thinking. It's a technique I call constant, legacy-free reinvention. And this is how you do it. Choose a day, any day, it could be tomorrow, next week, whenever. Choose a day, and on that day, pay very close attention to everything you do from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed. Every single action you perform, whether it's brushing your teeth, or sending an email, or hosting a meeting, or having a conversation, whatever it is at its heart trying to solve a problem. Whether that problem is because your teeth are dirty, or because you need to order something, or arrange something, or whatever. But it's trying to solve a personal or a business problem, short-term or long-term. And when you've been mindful of this, when you're mindful of what that problem is that you're trying to solve with your action, take a step back and think, if I was to solve this problem today for the first time, how would I do it given today's technologies? If I was doing this for the first time ever, and I had to use a modern tool or a modern technology, how would I do it? And if you apply just that simple question to everything you do throughout the course of one day, it will highlight all of the places that you can innovate within your place of work and within your personal life. Now, as I said, it's incredibly difficult for us to think about how the future is going to evolve. It's incredibly difficult for us to plan ahead more than a couple of years. So instead of doing that, my challenge to you is to try and get yourself not into the future, but to the very edge of the present. To use as much as possible the very latest tools and techniques. and to be mindful of what it is you do on a day-to-day basis, and to see where you have fallen into a rut with old systems and old legacies. If you can do that, then approaching the future will be ever, ever easier. Because you'll no longer have to worry about something that is coming out of science fiction. You'll only have to think joyfully about what opportunities will arise when you wake up tomorrow morning to tomorrow's new technologies. If you can do that, then you will always be at the forefront of your business, and you'll always be indispensable, and you'll always have a fulfilling career and life ahead of you. As I said, if you'd like to be in touch, here's my email, Twitter, website. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope you have a really, really wonderful rest of the day.
Yeah, I want to clap that. He's not here, but I want to clap. For me, that was a really positive talk that he just did. I know some of us in the industry have had a lot of fears about the future of technology, and I think the way he speaks, it makes me feel, I don't know how you guys feel, but it makes me feel really positive about the future and how many things are going to help our profession. As Ben said, this is his contact details. He is absolutely more than happy for you guys to tweet him or email him if you have anything that's come up over his presentation that you want to drop him a note about. So please do. Okay.